Hi, I'm Michael,
And I'm Christina.
and today we're talking about the poem Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost.
Alright, so the main theme of the poem is actually kind of introduced in the title. And the word acquainted is interesting because acquainted means having met or meeting a person or something like. So it's not like he's not like friends with the night or he's not against it. So he's kind of just mutual on that point. And then night can be either night itself, like the darkness it brings, or it can be like a deeper sense, as in like depression or being frustrated and such like that, or even fear. And it goes on in the poem, and he's going away from the light as if he's being more hopeless. He has no hope left, I guess. And he's going further into the dark. And it's all in past tense, too, which I thought was interesting. Um,
Yeah, certainly.
what did you think the main theme was, Michael?
Yeah, I think depression was definitely a central theme here. I mean, he uses a lot of dark words that just make you kind of sad. He even uses the word saddest at least once. He uses words like dropped and unwilling, and it does kind of make you feel sad just reading the poem. But I noticed also at the very beginning, he uses a lot of anaphora. He says, I have. He repeats that at the beginning of every line. Through lines 1 through 5, he repeats it every single time.
Comes back up again in
And
line
slowly it just kind of diminishes away where he doesn't say it anymore.
7.
So,
And then, along with the word choice and such, it has like almost a tone of loneliness. With like I have been, it's like you're thinking more about the past. It's like what like things have happened. And he says, I have walked out in rain and back in rain on line 2, which obviously rain usually has a symbolism for being depressed or something bad. There's never usually a good thing to go with it. And the rain is basically unavoidable, and it's more like an isolation because he's doing it on his own. And this entire time, he's not really mentioning another person. And when he does mention other people, he mentions a watchman on line 5 when he says, I have passed by the watchman on his beat and dropped my eyes and willing to explain. So you don't really know what he's explain or needs to explain or what he's avoiding, but you can tell he's avoiding human contact. As well as in line 8 when he says far and far away and interrupted cry, came over houses from another street but not to call me back or say goodbye. Even then, he's not responding to it, he's not reacting to it, so he's separating himself from society in a way, and he's isolating himself.
so real quick, going back to the Watchman,
Yes.
do you think that the mention of the Watchman was important? Do you think that, because it seems that the only people that show up in the story is the interrupted cry, it's the only mention of another person, and then the Watchman. Do you think that the Watchman is supposed to be a bad thing?
I don't particularly think the watchman is a bad thing. The watchman is usually someone who is security or someone on duty doing his usual routine. He probably doesn't usually see people walking around. It's interesting, though, he doesn't say anything to the speaker, but rather that it's even more important that the speaker ignores the watchman. He doesn't even look him in the eye. He just kind of looks down and keeps going. So he's avoiding any human contact that he could have had. Which another important thing that I found was the rhyme scheme, which kind of went along with this. And it was A B A A B A B C B C D C D A D A A. So
It's a lot of A's at the beginning and the end.
Mm-hmm. So as it goes on, the rhyme scheme ends as his poem ends. So
it's full circle.
Full circle, yep. Which is funny because it does another full circle because the first line is repeated in the end as well. That I have been one acquainted with the night. All right, so Michael, what do you think about the diction in the poem, such as on line 7 when he says, "I have stood still and stopped the sound of feet"?
Right. Well, I think that the mention of the stopping the sound of feet instead of saying stopping the sound of his feet or someone else's feet is because he wants to convey this message of everything being disconnected. So he's not connected to his feet. He's not connected. This is built upon when he talks about an interrupted cry in line 8. The interrupted cry, it has to be interrupted by something, and that helps to show the disruption, how everything is kind of not connected. So I thought that was another important theme that he kind of subtly brings up.
Mm-hmm. So everything is just disconnected. He's disconnected from himself when he mentions that he stopped with left feet instead of his feet. He's disconnected from people because he's not talking to the watchman and he's not saying anything back to the person crying. And the houses and the streets almost seem disconnected because the sounds have to travel through multiple streets and it just sounds like they're far apart. And it's a whole bunch of disconnection. It makes you feel more isolated because you're not close to anything or anyone.
A lot of loneliness.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that the fact that this takes place at night, when you're in the dark, you feel like you're surrounded by vastness because everything is the same. I think that also helps feed into the feeling of disconnection.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you think the overall attitude or tone of the poem was here?
In a way, I want to say loneliness because he seems to be just like he's just away from everything, even like his own thoughts because he's not explaining anything. But in another way, I think he's accepting of it. He's not like
Not actively pursuing.
yeah, he's not doing anything too negative. He is, however, walking away from the light on line 3. He says, "I have outwalked the furthest city light." So he's walking towards darkness and the unknown, which is almost like he's walking away from hope or happiness.
Also, one thing I noticed in line 12, it says, "A luminary clock against the sky proclaimed the time was neither right nor wrong." I thought perhaps the luminary clock could be the moon, because the the moon is, of course, illuminated at night. It is against the sky, and you can use it to tell time. So I thought that was pretty neat how he incorporated that in there. And he says that the moon, or what we are going to assume is the moon, proclaimed the time was neither right nor wrong, because it doesn't really tell you anything specific. It just kind of tells you perhaps what month it is or what time of the month. So there's more ambiguity, more disconnection in those lines, things that are just kind of not coming together.
Another important thing relating to what you said that I saw was that it says a luminary clock, where, as mentioned in the first stanza, he's out walking the furthest light. So while he's no longer in the artificial lighting of the city, he's now in this natural light brought amongst from possibly moon. Another important thing is that it's against the sky rather than in the sky. So although it might not be the moon, it shows limitations, which he has issues with, since not everything seems to be connected.
All right, that's it.
All right, and that's Acquainted with the Night by Robert Frost.